Hello, everybody. My name is Lloyd, and I'm from Tipperary. I'm very privileged to be a friend of John Fogarty. Unfortunately, John cannot be with us today because he's had, well, not a good diagnosis, and he's undergoing chemotherapy. So he's been ordered to, but he can't mix with crowds, he has to restrict his movements, in other words. So I have this job of showing you all the lovely plants we have at home in Tipperary. Just to remind you that Tipperary is quite a large county. And at one stage, for years and years, it was divided into two ridings. You had the North Riding and the South Riding. But of course, they did away with all that recently. So we just have Tipperary now, quite a long county. So the first nice plant I want to show you is Toothwort. Now, a lady called Mika Mulliar, explanation of a strange name, her dad is a Belgian, but she's the local ecologist in Clonmel, and she looks after quite a large area. So Mika was telling John that this plant was discovered at Glenbourne on the edge of the River Suir, outside Clonmel. So John phoned me up and away we went one day about 5 or 6 years ago to find the Toothwort. And we were rewarded. We found it, of course, growing in deep shade. It grows, there's a bit of woodland. So we parked up the car and we went down, meandered down through the woodland, zigzag, and found the Toothwort almost on the banks of the Suir. And I know you're all experts. I don't have to tell you that it's a saprophytic plant, and its roots invade other plants, the roots of other plants, mostly hazel, I think, and poplar, but it will also use other shrubs and trees to find food. Now I have another slide of that. Now, a friend of John's then, his name is Jackie O'Connell, and he was telling John that he was down, he's a Kildare man. I met a Kildare person today. He came down from Kildare to play golf at Dundrum. I hasten to add Dundrum, County Tipperary, just to make that clear. And we have a very fine golf course there. And Jackie, on his way into the golf club, spotted the Toothwort growing under, I think it was beech, if I'm right. And John was telling me, so I took myself off to Dundrum and found the Toothwort under the tree. It's a fascinating plant, no green parts. Now, the next plant I want to show you is the green-winged orchid, Anacamptis morio. Now, for years, I had a wish to see this plant, and in my book, it's very rare. But anyway, looking at the old, I think this survey was done by Roger Goodwillie way back. There's lots of locations in Tipperary: Laffin's Bridge, New Inn, Cooley and South Tipperary, and also Feathered and Tempeletney. But unfortunately, the two latter sites, Feathered and Tempeletney, they have fallen to modern farming methods and they no longer exist. Anyway, John took me to a great site outside New Inn where we discovered this lovely orchid, the green-winged orchid. And on the day I noted that it was growing beside cowslips, and the other plant was, mouse ear, Pilosella officinarum. Okay, and that's, I think I have another slide. Have I paused? Yeah, that's the lovely green-winged orchid. Okay, now the next slide I have, we went on a foray, I suppose at least 5 years. You see, we had COVID, so that extends everything back farther than I realized. We went down to Glengarrow Wood, which is the next exit after Care on the Dublin-Cork motorway. And we discovered, we were walking in, it was John's intention on the day to find mushrooms. But we came upon this extraordinary, they were actually in seed. They were, the stems on upright stems with loads of seeds. And we wondered, we said, gosh, it is an orchid. I wonder which one it is. So I think John took some pictures and he sent it into the data center. And the answer came back that it was the bird's nest orchid, Neotia nidus avis. And Rasquelga, I was fascinated. Moggerlin nida ain. Anyway, the location is Glengara Wood. We parked up the car. You enter it from when you exit the motorway. I suppose it could be even 5 miles on a long, straight, bumpy road because it's a bit boggy. And we went into the wood and we parked up the car. Lots of people walk in the wood. So, gosh, maybe 50 meters up along on the left-hand side, under an oak tree, all these plants were growing. Now, they grew from deep shade to dappled sunlight, and it turned out to be the bird's nest orchid. Now, as you know, I'm telling the experts, it lacks chlorophyll and it has no green parts. And John did a count then on the numbers, and we have numbers 278 at peak down to 140. And I have to tell you that I visit Glengara Woods at least once a year to see bird's nest orchid. Okay, now the next slide I have for you, and this is thanks to Paul Green putting a great PowerPoint together for me, is the fly orchid. Now, every year for about 5 years pre-COVID, we went down to the National Park in the Borough in County Clare to see the fly orchid, Ophrys insectivora. I was fascinated by its resemblance to a fly and how we all abhor the flies, but they do have their function. Now, this year, John, again, looking at the old records, he discovered that the fly orchid is in the Commons of Carney. And it was at least our third attempt to find it. They're pretty, it was difficult to find them. We've been there on at least 3 occasions to find it. Anyway, on a beautiful sunny day in May 2022, we parked up the car and walked in along the trackway. And right on the edge of the road between the trackway, between us and the Callows, I spotted goat's beard. I'm sure you're all familiar with goat's beard, Tragopogon pratensis, right on the edge of the trackway. And then we stepped into the Callows. At this stage now, they were bone dry. There was no water. And we found lots and lots and lots of the fly orchid. So much so that we had to be careful where we put our foot down in case we would step on one, and that would be sacrilegious, wouldn't it? And it's a great site for North Tipperary, so it is, to find the fly orchid there. Now, on the day, we also looked for the green-winged orchid, as the records said they were there. But we failed to find any, we expected to find it in seed at this stage, but we failed to find any on the day. Now, this was another trip that we took to Kilgarvan in North Tipperary, beautiful part of Tipperary there up on the banks of the Shannon. And we found the water violet, Houtonia palustris. And the location was Kilgarvan Quay. And I was fascinated because I had never seen the water violet before, to discover that it was a very pretty plant with 5 petals and a golden eye. And the leaves are totally submerged. And another common name I was reading for it was feather foil. Now, many, many moons ago, I was at a lecture given by none other than Dr. John Feehan. And he was telling us about the bee orchid. And I said, there couldn't be a flower that resembles a bee, could there, Anyway, I was to find out. So this is the lovely bee orchid, Ophrys epiphyra. Now, quite only a few kilometers from my own home, John rang up one day and told me that there was a white form. So I drove out to the turnpike and turned left, and up the road, sure enough, we found lots of, this was in 2018, I'd say, lots and lots of Ophrys epiphyra chlorantha. That's the white one. And quite a lot of it growing there. Again, I was fascinated with the variation. And then on the near Leek, near Littleton, we also found the wasp orchid, Ophrys epiphyra flavescens. And I think it slightly changes the shape as it matures and it gets that V end to the bee-like body. Okay, now in this, that's a fascinating stretch of road right there between Urlingford and Littleton. And just down further, if I go to the turnpike, remember now I'm coming out of Thurles and I come to the turnpike, and this time we went right and we found loads of ivy, a high sloping bank going right down to the roadway. And we found loads of ivy, there was ivy growing up on top. And we found lots of twayblade, Neota ovata, I think, isn't it? We also found ivy broom rape, Orobanche hedera, and common broom rape. And then just down further near the entrance to a farmway, and by the way, he cuts the bank. But anyway, we were there before he cut the grass on the bank. We found the pyramid orchid in great profusion. Now, just referring back to chlorantha again, John is very friendly with his geologist, and he was saying that the rock content there's a high magnesium content in the rock, and maybe that gives rise to the chlorantha form of the bee orchid. Okay. Now, back again to Kilgarvan Quay in North Tipperary and the water dock. Now, it was only the second time that I'd come across the water dock, Rumex hydrolapatum. Okay, Kilgarvan Quay. And then I was looking it up and it said it grows on the margins of canals and pools. Now, I'd seen it a good few years before that. Again, down Roger Goodwillie took us one day, we went on one of his walks in Hugginstown Fen. That was the first time I'd seen the water dock, which was great to see it in County Tipperary. And they tell me it's a plant of 2 meter stature with at least another meter underground of a root. So that was the water dock. Okay. Now this was the highlight of this year. So it was. Got a phone call from John to tell me that he had a phone call from Kevin Collins of Birdwatch Ireland, and Kevin was out looking for birds, and as he was going through a gap, he found this new orchid, as he thought. So he was telling John about it, and this turns out to be Dactylorhiza fuchsii variety Rhodocille. Now this plant is in the early stages where the inlay is wine, and then as the plant gets more mature, the inlay turns to that royal purple, a beautiful plant. There was only one in the gap. And where we found it was a few miles, I suppose, south of the Horse and Jockey. We took a left and went straight down that road. And directly opposite the recycling plant, we got over the wire fence by hook or by crook. I'm not a person of tall stature. It was a job to get in. But anyway, and then John showed me this lovely orchid. And we walked the meadow. It was a beautiful meadow, wildflower meadow. And we walked the meadow, but we failed to find another one. Now, John's also telling me that it's mentioned in that fine orchid volume that was produced by Brendan Sayers and Susan Six. It's in one of the first few pages, this particular variety of Dactylorhiza. Now, this took us, this little plant here, I'd never seen this before now, but John said he's very familiar with it. We went up to the silver mines, and maybe up on higher ground from the silver mines, we were looking for actually the, what did they call it? The small white orchid, is it? Yeah. Again, old records showing that it grew on this side. Anyway, we were going out through a sloping gap where the soil was very stony, sandy, rocky, as you can see from the picture. And again, quite a wet place, so there would be a trickle of water. And we found slender parsley pear, Aphanes australis, and the location, silver mines to the left of the village. I was reading then that it grows on tracts and bare cultivated places. And I was fascinated with the fan-shaped leaves divided into 3 segments. And close by then, John was telling me there's another plant to the left of it on the screen. And this little plant is Montia fontana. Again, a small plant that grows in trickles of water on acid soil. Okay, next slide. Oh God, this was one John put in. This is Homo sapiens N. on bended knee up in the silver mines that very wet day, dressed in head to toe in waterproofs. Okay, and the next slide, please. Now, this is John's own stomping ground, a place called Killock Hill, just a few kilometers from his house. And here we have the beautiful autumn gentian. Also, growing there, we have the blue fleabane. What is it? Origeron acris. Okay. And on another time, I was with John out there, and we discovered New Zealand flax, Epilobum brunescens. Okay. And finally, this is the man who should be standing here in front of you, giving you this talk. This is John Fogarty in action. And I want to thank John so much for all those very fine photographs. I want to thank Paul Green for putting together a beautiful PowerPoint presentation. And finally, I want to thank you, the audience, for being so attentive. Thank you.